My name is Vincent Kwashi from Panasonic. I'm the area sales manager covering the Northeast, and looking forward to an outstanding breakout session with Peter Zalinski. And I would like to introduce Peter, who is our next speaker. Peter is the supply chain architect at Barcoding. He has over 20 years of experience in the AIDC business. Zalinski, Peter continuously enables customers to become more efficient, accurate, and connected in the supply chain industry by educating them on labeling and identification. Using his experience in the field, Peter understands the importance of not only tracking data, but analyzing it to gain further visibility into the warehouse and even the enterprise as a whole, so that the supply chain leaders can make better decisions and drive growth. So it's my pleasure to introduce Peter. Peter, take it away.
Will do. I did say this was a workshop, so I'm going to get ready to do a little bit of work. I've already rolled up my sleeves, so we got that part taken care of. Now, I've been involved in the industry for a lot of time, and they've asked me to do a workshop on continuous improvement. So I'm taking a kind of a fresh look at continuous improvement, and I hope to share that with you today. So that's basically who I am. And let's get going on what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to start off with some definitions, talking about what continuous improvement is and is not, and talk about some of the challenges of continuous improvement. And then we're going to get into some actual practice for the workshop. So I'm going to have 5 volunteers up here because I need operations in place. And we're going to make a continuous improvement goal and achieve it, hopefully, given the time allowed. We're also going to have a question and answer session because I know there's a lot of continuous improvement experts here in the audience, and I want to get feedback from you and see what else is going on in the world, and we will review what we've gone over today. So if you'll notice right in the middle of your table, there is should be a copy for everyone. If not, kind of shuffle around. We will be referring to this or allowing you to refer to that later. It is not the slide deck, so there's no reason to go through there and flip it page by page with me. However, it is reference materials that we will use later on in the day, and that set of 3M pads that's attached to that, we have a use for those as well. If you don't already have writing utensils, if you didn't bring any with you, there's at least 2 on every table. If you didn't bring them with you, why are you here? It's a workshop. Bring your materials. Okay. So let's get started on this mess. So this is probably the most typical sign you see when somebody talks about continued improvement. It shows up in PowerPoints across the globe. And what is it showing? It's showing an arrow that is pointed straight at a target. And that target is supposed to be your goal for continuous improvement. How many people here have seen an arrow in flight in slow motion? Have you seen those videos? You guys know what I'm talking about? So that arrow looks like it's flying straight at its target. Ain't not happening. What's happened is compression. That arrow is actually bending and wobbling on its path. And as you look at it, it's not really heading straight towards its target, although it will reach its goal if it was aimed correctly. I want you to keep that image in mind as we go through this, because continuous improvement is not a straight line path to success. It's a process to get you to success, but that's what it's there for. So we're going to start off with a little bit of Kipling. I kind of promised that up ahead. We're going to be talking about the just so stories because it introduces the fundamental concept that we're using to solve problems and set up what we do. And what we do is we ask questions. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. There's a lot more to this poem, and it's actually included in your packet. But it gives us a good introduction to the basics of any continuous improvement process, which is asking questions. You don't need to know the answers. You just need to know to ask the questions. You're working through unknowns, trying to get past obstacles to get to a goal. You might know the goal, but you might not know the path there. This is part of that process. So let's talk about some of the hows. There's a lot of words up there. Okay, I don't expect you to know them all. There might be a few that you can recognize. Continuous improvement has been around as a concept for quite some time. It started off with Deming, and we'll introduce him in a moment. It may be going all the way back to Henry Ford, who created the first assembly line. And continuous improvement is not a new concept, but doing it right is. What it takes to continuously improve has become a little bit less of a mystery and more of a science as time goes on. And that's exactly what it is. We're doing science to make things better. That's what continuous improvement is. That's your working definition for today. If you're not using science in your continuous improvement program, either you don't understand continuous improvement or you don't understand science. You're not applying it properly. So let's give you some clues, let's give you some tools, and move this on. So the scientific method basically has 4 things going on. You've got to be able to plan for something, which means you have to understand and build up observations and metrics for what's currently happening. You need to be able to execute some experiments and carry this thing forward so that you're actually trying to get some improvements. And those experiments may be destined to fail. Again, what's the new saying? Fail hard, fail often, fail cheaply. That's kind of our goal today. Documentation, if you don't document, there's no way to prove that you've improved. You have to make sure that those metrics are better than they were before. If they're not, you didn't succeed. And last but not least, you have to review what you did and see whether or not you've learned anything. Because sometimes your expected results and your actual results will not be the same. What do you learn from that? That's all part of the process. So anytime you're doing continuous improvement, you need something to improve. And I want you to think about that something as an opportunity. Not as waste, but as an opportunity. And those opportunities are pretty much standardized across all the various methods, whether you're talking about Six Sigma or Lean or Agile, whatever your approach to continuous improvement is, it probably falls into one of these categories. I'm going to try to use my pointer here. Excess motion is pretty obvious. That's anytime you've got something that's happening in the process that you don't need to have happen. Extra motion somewhere along the line. Overproduction. Translation, you're making too much product to sell. It's sitting on your shelf, you've got carrying costs, whatever that might be. Overproduction is a waste. Excess inventory, that means if you're building stuff, you've got too much raw material on the shelf. You've got more there than you need. That's an excess. Underutilized talent. Self-explanatory, but often overlooked. You've got people in places that are way above and beyond what their capabilities are. They could be moved on to something else a little bit more challenging for them, make better use of them. Excess processing, doing the same thing over and over again, or doing too much to one thing. Waiting. And defects, of course. Defects are like your Six Sigma focus in life. Once you've found that opportunity, you need to rate them because you can't solve all of your problems at once. There's no way. You're going to have a long list, and you've got to figure out which one of those items, which one of those wastes in your list that you want to solve and attack. Because again, you can't attack them all at once. Once you've selected your target, you want to make sure it's clearly identified and easily measured. If you can't measure it, how do you know it's a problem? So, last but not least, you want to pick an attainable goal. Don't set your sights too high. It's got to be something you can reach in a reasonable amount of time, or you may have moved on to another job before you even achieve success. So let's keep things in perspective. So Deming has been a big mover in the quality management circles. And he started back in post-war Japan, working on the reconstruction, and was brought in as a consultant, basically to help those industries become better. And he succeeded. A lot of the theories that he was working on for quality improvement became a part of the Japanese culture, and they stepped forward with that. He was featured in a 1980 documentary that said, if Japan can, why can't we? And some of the stuff came back across the pond into GM and into Ford and into other places, and quality improvement and the whole continuous improvement process kind of started with Deming. And he's got a tool that's named after him. It's called the Deming Cycle. You might know about it as PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act. He didn't create this, but it's named after him. He actually has another acronym that he prefers, but we're going to be using this one because this has become standard. And what is this all about? Well, you have to first understand your base level conditions. You have to have metrics to start from, baseline operations. Once you understand the problem, you know what you're going to be doing, go ahead and run an experiment or two. And then follow up and review to see whether or not that experiment was a success. Check your metrics. Again, did your metrics get better or worse? If they got better, go ahead, set a new standard and move forward. Now, you could run this cycle once or twice or 3 times over the same problem, trying to get better and better and better at it. Or you could set a new standard and move on to a different problem because you've achieved your goal. If you did not achieve your goal, what do? You go back and make sure that you understood, make sure you understand the problem. Because obviously, if your experiment was a complete failure, there's something you forgot to take a look at. And we'll bring that up again later on today. So what should your expectations be if you're running a continuous improvement project? Well, God willing, it looks something like this. You've had an improvement, and you've set a new standard, right? This is kind of standard goal. Now, I want you to think in terms of there's more than this, okay? Because we want to be able to use this as a practice, which involves repeating a process using the same tools. Again, you've probably seen videos or images similar to this. The idea is you're setting a standard which kind of sets you on a new platform, wedges things in place so you can move forward from that point. If you've ever tried to move a big ball up a hill, having a wedge underneath it helps keep it in place, so this metaphor carries pretty far. And again, we're talking about time and quality. It's going to take a while. You're going to have a lot of steps along the way, and that's okay. How big of a step you take and who makes those steps is part of our next slide. So if you're doing continual improvement, okay, I'm going to use two words, continual and continuous. We're going to play semantics here a little bit. Continual improvement means you've got a team or a number of teams that are working on projects throughout your company. And when they succeed in a goal, quality goes up because they've set a new standard for something. It might not be the same process overall. We might not be talking about one continuous process, but we could be talking about a number of processes across your organization. So if you'll notice, it's still stepwise refinement. Things are getting better, but not at the same rate. Sometimes it's a short hop, sometimes it's a long hop, sometimes it takes more time. And that is pretty much a characteristic of continual improvement. And when we talk about the challenges, we'll talk about why that happens. But there's also a process called continuous improvement. And continuous improvement means you have set a baseline in your organization that scientific methods are used to improve everything on a daily basis. So you're making tons of incremental changes, almost infinitesimal changes, to make things better. And it's not being led by management teams that run and kind of SWAT team a problem. You're still going to have those SWAT teams out there looking at big changes. But what you want is a continuous improvement culture that spreads throughout your entire company, from the janitor all the way up to the CEOs, so that they've got this thing built into their system so that they're trying to improve things. And that takes a bit of training, and that can be a challenge as well. So the APQC, the American Productivity and Quality Center, put out a report earlier this year that kind of proves or exemplifies what the top 3 challenges are. And we're actually going to talk about the top 5 because they're all important. And I think I've got a tool that actually hits and solves all 5. So top 3, creating a continuous improvement culture. Too often, continuous improvement is seen as a not so much a solution for everyone, but something that's done to create an improvement in one area of the business. You're doing continuous improvement over here, but not necessarily over there, because this is okay. Identifying, prioritizing, and selecting opportunities. If you can see over here on the wall, you've got the basic 7 opportunities, right? Which one do you choose first? How many different problems do you have that fall into those opportunities? You run into analysis paralysis. There's too much low-hanging fruit. I don't know which one to pick. And last but not least, overcoming organizational resistance. Oh, it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? We've heard that many times. So there's 2 more challenges that weren't as high-ranking but are equally important. One is capturing the ROI. Not all improvements, not all metrics are tied directly back to dollars. Sometimes it's a small change where it's not even going to register at the $1 million level, and that's okay. But the idea is, if you want to capture the ROI, make sure your metrics are tied to dollars. If they're not tied to cost, you're not going to be able to capture it in a meaningful way that the accountants can understand. And is your organization aligned? If you've got multiple continuous improvement opportunities happening all over the place, it's pretty hard to keep all of those different cats pointed in the same direction. Herding cats is not a lot of fun. So the same organization, the APQC, also said there's 5 top skill sets you need to develop if you want to improve your continuous improvement process. So think about that. It's a little bit of recursion. You want to improve how you improve, correct? So they said, the top 5 are change management, design thinking, analytics, problem solving, and project management. Now, to me, project management is probably the most obvious, because if you don't know what everyone's doing and you don't have some kind of a handle on all those continuous improvement opportunities, you're probably not going to make a whole lot of progress. Problem solving skills, again, that's a no-brainer. You need to develop problem solving skills across your teams, or they're going to run into problems and not know how to solve them. Analytics, this is how you get your ROI in dollars and cents. If you can use business analytics, you can tie those improvements to other changes in the system that actually saved you money. If you can prove that you made this change on this date and we were making this much more money on that date, you can actually draw a connection and start making inferences. Change management, again, to me, that's a no-brainer. If you're making changes for improvement, you have to make sure those changes are being managed so that they pass through the company in a kind of organized and impactful way that doesn't break things along the way. And last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about design thinking. Design thinking is a way of bringing marketing and free thinking to a problem-solving opportunity in a way that reduces the silos and breaks down a lot of the bias involved in continuous improvement teams, where your boss's idea is automatically better than yours because he's your boss. You want to remove some of those dependencies. And we're going to use a few of the tools from design thinking to help speed up our process today. So again, you want to develop these skill sets to improve an existing continuous improvement process or incorporate them into whatever the heck you're doing now. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Toyota Kata because that's what we're working on today. Now, Mike Rother went back to Toyota in about 2009, and he spent time on site and noticed that they had a continuous improvement program that pushed all the way down to the lowest level within the operation. We're talking about crowdsourcing continuous improvement, not limiting it just to high-powered teams, but getting everybody to learn how to do a scientific method of improving their process right there where they are on every single day. And they work at this 20 minutes a day, about the same amount of time you take for a coffee break or cigarette break. 20 minutes a day to work on whatever they're currently working on their continuous improvement projects. It's kind of a cool concept, and we're going to get into some more detail on that in a moment. So how does it work? Again, I think I promised you guys I'd be spending about 10 minutes talking, then we'd start doing. How am I doing for time? Perfect. Okay, so with a Toyota Kata, you want to have a goal that's corporate-wide, and that's our target. That's what we want everyone across the entire enterprise to be working on. And in this case, we're going to focus on 100% on-time shipments. We've already solved that whole zero defects thing. And what are we doing? We're going to give people a kata or a pattern to follow to solve problems. Now, if you're practicing martial arts, a kata is a simple form. It's reproducible. Anyone can do it. Again, anyone can do this four-step pattern. Now, if they get better at it, they're going to be able to do the pattern without having to refer to the documentation. That's kind of the goal. You want to get them to the point where they're starting to achieve mastery and understand what they're doing to improve what they're doing. So the four-step pattern is this. First, understand your direction or goal. In this case, our goal as a company is 100% on-time shipments. You with me so far? So that's our first part of the 4 steps. The next thing you need to be able to do is understand the current condition, where you're at right now. That means you have to do some observations. You have to take some metrics and figure out, okay, based upon the process that I'm trying to improve, what's it look like now? What's our baseline? And then set your next challenge. What do you want to do to improve that process? It might be as simple as moving a project from point A to point B. You move it and you're done. But I want you to set a slightly more challenging challenge. And then you want to run some experiments. Experiments that might fail. But that's okay. Fail fast, fail often, fail cheaply. Because you want those experiments to work to get you to that next target condition, whatever that might be. Now, you might set multiple target conditions to get to that final goal. But that's okay. That's part of the process. We'll revise that once we reach our target. And you're going to be using the PDCA cycle right in here as a part of your experiments and what you're trying to accomplish. You guys all with me so far? Not too crazy? Okay. Now, how do you get employees to do this? How do you get them to do this 4-step pattern? Well, you give them some tools. And you give them some coaching. But that 4-step pattern breaks down to 2 parts. Planning, give them a direction, let them find the current conditions, let them find a target condition, and then executing. Not too straight, not too confusing. The documenting and reviewing is also built into the process, so all 4 parts of the scientific method are built in. Documenting a learner board we'll get into in just a moment, and we'll also talk about the reviewing part because coaching is built in. It's a tool that anyone can use. You don't have to be in management to coach. Actually, what they often do is they have 2 people on 2 different learner boards. This document is called a learner board, that they're working on separate projects, and one will coach the other. The purpose of a coach is not to make the other person do their project better. It's to make the other person understand what they're doing better. You're not going to go up to bat for someone. You're going to help them go up to bat so that when they get there, they know, hey, I'm supposed to be on the pitcher's or on the batter's mound with a bat in my hand. This is what I use. These are my tools. So that's what the coaching part of this is. So let's take a look in detail and take a look at the learner board. So first off, let's talk about our focus process. Now, our focus process is the thing that everybody's trying to keep their eye on. You're going to keep your eye on the ball. This is what our target is. Everybody wants to be looking at that target. That's where we're going, right? The challenge might be, in our case, on-time shipments. I want 100% on-time shipments from my department, whatever that might be. I want to get things from receiving all the way to shipping on time in the least amount of time possible. So before I can set my target condition, I have to know what my actual conditions are. So I've got to do some observations and make some metrics. Now, based upon the actual condition, I might say, okay, right now on-time shipments are taking 4.5 hours. I think I can cut that down to 2.5. I want to cut 2 hours out of that time. So I'm going to set a target condition of 2.5 hours. So It's currently at 4.5. I want to get it down to 2.5. Now I've got to take a look at my obstacles. So the obstacles I've got up on the board over here, excess processing, defects, excess motion, overproduction, waiting, underutilized talent, otherwise known as people standing around doing nothing, and excess inventory. And I want to figure out which one of these obstacles I can apply as something I can experiment with. I can only pick one, so I'm going to throw them all up there and then make some kind of judgment call and say, I'm going to work on this one first. And what you do is you plug that in right here as an actual condition and say, this is something I want to improve. And then you start running your experiments. Not too complicated once you get the board down, but let's walk through it real quickly again. Company has a focus, I have a challenge. I know what my actual conditions are because I've made observations. I've also set a target condition based on those observations that I would like to achieve in a reasonable amount of time. I know what my obstacles are, and I'm going to work on them one at a time. When I've solved that obstacle by going through the PDCA cycle, by planning an experiment, running the experiment, and checking my data on a daily basis, I'm going to be able to tell whether or not I reached my target condition. My coach is going to help me along. My coach is the one asking questions to help guide me. And the first question is, what is your target condition, and what is your actual condition now? So now I have to kind of split my reality a little bit, because we need a challenge board and we need a focus process. So if I can get out of some of them my own way. If you're running through the baseline, you're just going to go straight through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's your target condition? Write it here. You can read it off the board. What's your actual condition? Again, they should be able to just read that off the board. Given the fact that they know what their actual condition is, what obstacles are getting in your way, and which one are you working on? Does that make sense? Now, what's your next step? So what experiments are you going to be running next? Okay. So how long is this series of experiments going to take? Because I need to know how quickly we can go and see what you've learned from this process. Now, typically at Toyota, this would be about a 2-week cycle. They're going to set a challenge that they think they can reach within 2 weeks. Because pretty much any time after that, it just gets to be a little bit too long, and the steps for improvement become too high. So you want to keep this reasonable so that they can actually make progress and that they can go through a number of coaching cycles over a time period. Now, they could continue to go through this coaching kata and the custom improvement kata over and over again ad infinitum. It's a tool that everybody can use. But after a certain point in time, they might kind of graduate out from having to use the paperwork, and all they're doing is this. They're running through and making improvements on their operation, and they're documenting it. This could be a single piece of paper sitting in a drawer somewhere. It doesn't have to be up on a wall. But during the teaching process, as they're implementing this throughout the company, this is up on the wall. And actually, if you guys have seen Kaizen boards on factory floors, it's the same kind of concept. It's just another refinement of the same stuff. This is not the only tool that's out there. This is just the tool I have to show you today. And there's reasons I like this tool, and I kind of want to refresh you on those. Those 5 challenges that we were talking about, creating a culture, solved. Everybody's doing this. Being able to eliminate and select your obstacles, what your challenges are, everyone's doing it, and we give them a method to be able to eliminate those challenges and figure out what they're working on, because they're working on everything every day. They're picking one part of it for incremental change. So you're going to see process improvement that's going to bubble up from the bottom instead of being top down. I think that's really important. Now, top down still has to be done, because what these people are doing is they're refining their current process. They're refining what they do every day. So they're working on the stuff that's not going to change unless it just gets better. From the top down, you're looking to make better process changes, give them new processes, new opportunities. That's a different approach. This approach is designed to get it to bubble up from the top, or excuse me, from the bottom. So again, if we're going to do this on a second round, and I know you guys are getting ready to actually do the experiment, then you're going to go through this reflection of the last step. So what I'd like you to do now is take off that piece of sticky tape, that's sticky pad, and I'd like you to rip that up into at least 3 pieces, because we're going to use that for voting. The color doesn't matter. It's just going to be used for voting. And not everybody has to run up. But when you vote, what I'm going to have you do is take that piece of paper, and you're going to just, oops, I got more than one. You're going to just kind of rip it off and say, hey, I'd like to place my vote. I think the most obvious problem is defects. And you're just going to vote by placing defects up on the board and then go sit down. So we're going to give you an opportunity to get up and move around in a few moments. But before we do that, I'm going to need some volunteers. If you will turn to one of the later pages in that packet, you will find the coaching kata. And what I'd like you to do is put that in front of you so that you can see that coaching kata. We do have the focus process here up on the board. So we're going to be running through the learner board as a part of this workshop. And then I'm going to be needing some volunteers. Now, you won't have to juggle. That's not the rule. That's not what this is about. This is merely just to get your attention and to keep me from babbling too much. OK? Now we need to know what we're doing. So let's move on to that. Let's move on to the actual functional part of the workshop. Time, please. Ooh, OK. I think we're about on schedule. So here's our kata, our workshop. I've got 3 tennis balls. These represent products to be shipped. Make sense? We just got 3 products that have to go out the door. They are going to come into receiving, and then pass to put away. Put away is going to pass them to pick. Pick's going to pass them to pack. Pack's going to pass them to ship. Each tennis ball is a product. It has to be touched by every person, and it has to be touched in order. First 1, then 2, and then 3. Did I get that right? And then 3. So we got 3 balls. That's how that's going to work. Now I need 5 volunteers. You don't really have to do a whole lot except follow directions. You don't even have to look pretty. That's OK. So volunteer, come on up. That's 1. Come on up. That's 2. That's 3. That's 4. OK. You are going to be receiving, so I'm going to put you right here in front. Just face forward. We'll put the tennis balls here for the moment. OK. We're going to make you into put away. I'm going to put you right over here. Wait a minute. You guys are in front of the board. You're right. Let's move this over a little bit. OK. I still need a 5th, yes. OK. Put you right here. So I want you guys to be about this far apart. So spread out just a little bit. I'm going to put you over here on the end then. Looks like you get to be receiving. Good. OK. So this is our entire process. We've got receiving, put away, picking, packing, and shipping. I've got 3 tennis balls. And the way the rule is going to work is when all the tennis balls have made it into the can and the lid is put down on the can, that's what's going to stop our timer. So I'm going to hand the can to shipping for right now. Here's your lid. Now, we know how receiving works. Things come in boxes, right? So I'm going to put all 3 tennis balls inside the box so that receiving can begin. And we're going to set the initial conditions. So for those of you in the audience, you are going to be learners. I'm just kind of here to coach things a little bit. But you're also going to be coaches because everybody gets to do everything. So I've got to find my timer because we have to actually talk about our time. And unfortunately, you guys don't get to see anything because you're over here. So I'm going to talk a lot. So our focus process is 100% on time ship. And the way we're going to approach this challenge is our challenge is going to be shortest time from receiving to shipping. Make sense? So shortest time R to S. And I apologize for my handwriting. So obstacles. Well, we don't know what our obstacles are yet because we haven't actually seen the process. So we have to set our baseline and do some observations. So before we set our baseline, I'd like people to practice. Because there's no point in recording something and setting that as a baseline time unless they've actually had a few iterations to run through. So let's get this started. And what I'd like receiving to do is pick a ball out of the box and pass it to put away. And you guys kind of get the process. And then continue that on. Let's see how efficient we can make this. Now, are the balls in sequence? You went from 1 to 2 to 3. And now the lid goes on. OK. So let's do this one more time. I'm just going to empty this back into the starting point. Again, I'm sticking with the initial conditions. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Again, we're just trying to set the baseline. This is the way things run. We don't want to change anything yet. On your mark, get set, go. OK, let's give it one more try. That's good. That's really good. You guys are with the program, and you're already starting to think ahead. Now, you guys are not allowed to experiment. You are merely operations. You're just the process. These guys are the ones who are going to be running the experiment and trying to tell us what we need to do and what we need to change. Are you guys with me so far? And I'm going to also play coach, and I'm going to go through the coaching kata and try to get some feedback. So let's do this one more time and see what you guys do. Oh, you're right. Again, that would be an obstacle. Correct. On your marks, get set, go. Now, I know I can see gears turning back here. So don't play too far ahead on me. Okay. So we're going to do it one more time. This time I'm going to time it so that we actually have a baseline we can put on the board. Okay? Work with me here. It gets better. I promise. Because I don't have to do the thinking. I just have to do the directing. You can have that in the other hand if you like. Okay. On your marks, get set, go. I've got a new time. We're going to call it 7.97 seconds. I'm going to call it 8 seconds so that we're not being penalized by the speed of my thumbs. So we now have an actual time on task of 8 seconds. I think that's really important. That's t equals 1, or t1. Yeah, let's work with that. So you guys get to vote now. Looking at the process you just seen 4 times, what do you think is the most pressing problem that you'd like to solve to start off with? Are we talking about underutilized talent, excess inventory, wait time, overproduction, defects, excess motion, or excess processing? So just go ahead and take one of those pieces of paper, come on up, and we'll take out like 2 minutes to post it up on the board and then get back to your seat. Go. Just one. Just one. You can only pick one. Can be more too? No, no. You guys are processed. You get to relax now. What we're going to be doing, remember I said we have to figure out which one's the most important one? So we're going to make use of the votes and see what they tally up to, and then we're going to work on that particular aspect first. That's going to be our biggest opportunity. You guys can all sit down. I think we've got a winner here. There's no way these last 5 votes are going to change the tally. So if you can see, though you cannot read on the board, obviously excess motion is something we want to work on. So within our parking lot right now, we've got waiting, excess processing, and excess motion. Now this could be in the eye of the beholder, and it could be just kind of like everyone said, oh, look, shiny colors, I'm going to put mine here. But I think you guys were actually making concrete decisions when you made that choice. So we now have a target. I'm going to say 2 seconds. So you guys can do your percentages or figure out what that reduction is. But I think we can cut 6 seconds off of their time. Actually, to be honest, I think we could cut 7. But I'm being optimistic. Let's say 2. So we're going to bring this down to 2 seconds. What experiment would you like to perform to reduce this time? Hands, just because I don't want you all shouting it out. Suggestions?
Receiving, pick up all balls at once.
OK. Receiving, pick up all balls at once. Other suggestions? Receiving should have the can. No, you can't. You cannot jump directly from receiving to shipping. That's not allowed. Sorry. OK, so we've got third option. Move the box all the way down to the end. OK. Perfect. OK. Of those 3 choices, put it in the can to start with. Hands up. Move the box down all at once. 4 hands. And what was our third choice? Pick up all the balls at once. Which experiment do we want to run? Okay, I need more hands. So pick 1, 2, or 3. Move the box, pick them all 3 up at once, or put them in the can to start with.
But to reiterate, they have to go through each one of us still, right? We have to touch them? Okay.
Each ball, each product has to be touched by every person in the operation.
Okay.
Sure. Get them closer together. Okay, which one of these do we want to run? We want to get them closer together, put all the balls in one container. I think.
In order. 2, 3.
Okay, let's start off by putting the balls in order in one container and see what we can do. Which container do you want to choose? Do you want to choose the orange box, or do you want to choose the can? You have to take a look at the rules and make this decision. Left hand up if you want the box, right hand up if you want the can. Boxes or cans? Sure.
Does the balls have to go in numerical order in the can? Like 1, 2, 3.
Yes. So we get can. Now, defining how you touch each ball is another open question. Is it okay to touch the balls in the can?
Are we leaving them in the can?
I just said it has to. The lid has to be on the can. Your choice. Okay. So let's start off down here.
Get closer.
Nope, not yet. One experiment at a time. We're changing one rule at a time. So now the goal is we're going to try to get a better time by moving the can of all 3 balls down in sequence. First thing to check in receiving is, are all 3 balls in that can in the correct order? They should be. Okay. Now, we've changed our initial conditions, right?
Now we have a quality department.
We have a quality control department. Okay. So let's reset our time. Starts off. And then we're going to get all 3 balls from receiving to shipping and get the lid on it. And shipping's got to double check and close the can. So on your marks, get ready, get set, go. Stop. It's already closed. So now at T2, we are at, let's call it 6 seconds. So we've cut 2 seconds off of our time. So we've succeeded in working on one obstacle, which was excess motion. So we're not picking up as many balls as before, right? So let's go through our coaching kata and see what happens. So I'm going to pull out my copy of that sheet. And let's ask the question to the audience. So what was our target condition? 100% on-time shipments, but our target condition is 2 seconds. Correct. Our actual condition now, after we run some of our experiments, we're at 6 seconds. So we're getting closer. So what did we learn on our last step? Putting all the balls together shortens the amount of excess motion. Okay. What did we expect to have happen? We expected it to happen faster, right? What actually happened? Hey, lo and behold, it was 2 seconds faster. What did we learn? That our experiment was successful. Do we want to continue working on excess motion, or can we move on to something else? Let's move on to something else. The next thing up there on the obstacles board as our most valuable obstacle, or most valuable opportunity, is waiting. So I would say that if we're taking a look at what our next step is, we've decided that the obstacle that's preventing us from reaching our target condition now is going to be wait time. So we want to reduce the wait time. What's our next experiment? Suggestions? Move them closer together?
Can we change how we're configured?
I didn't say you couldn't.
All 5 standing on the box. Shipping can be second.
Okay. No, you can't put shipping second because it has to go through everyone's hands. Everyone still has to touch.
So all we have to do is touch it, so we don't just stand next to it and don't touch it. We don't have to pass it, we just touch it. In other words,
Okay.
we all just stand around this podium, and it's like,
So your experiment is, what would you like to do? Go ahead.
Reconfigure.
You reconfigure.
Reconfigure the assembly line.
So let's reconfigure the line. Go ahead. Work it through, work it through.
so we basically just all have to touch it one after another really quickly. So we'll put your finger out, and
See, this is what I get for getting a bright audience. No, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to have happen. So the experiment is, again, let's kind of do a quick review. Our target condition is 2 seconds. We're currently at 6. The obstacle we're trying to overcome is wait time. And their next step, or their next challenge, is reconfiguring the way the operations are connected. Make sense? So this is pretty obvious, and it's going to be a no-brainer, but I'll time it anyway. Doing a reset. On your marks, get ready, get set, go. I got less than a second. Thank you. Very well done. You guys can all go sit down. I get to keep the balls. So we have now not only reached our target condition, we've exceeded our goals, which I think is commensurate to a touchdown. I will need that. I don't give that back. So this Toyota Kata process is the idea of giving a teaching tool to your staff so that they can understand what continuous improvement looks like I don't expect you to be using tennis balls on the floor. That's kind of crazy. But you can apply this to anything within your operations, whether it's ship time, putting boxes away, unpacking boxes, whatever it might be. You could use the same type of process and focus on how to make that better. Now, there's no guarantee that any one process is going to be consistently implemented, correct? They don't do it the same way every time, even though it's the same thing. There's just, you can't enter the same river twice, is kind of that rule. But this does give you a tool where they can understand what the scientific method is and how to carry this process forward. And if continuous improvement doesn't have tools behind it that everyone understands, continuous improvement will not be successful. You've got to have all your tools. So you've got the learner board, which allows you to create a situation that handles our first, second, third, and even the fourth side of things. You want to be able to do your documentation so that people understand the problem. They have to be able to set a target condition or a goal. It's got to be aligned to whatever the company is trying to do as a whole, and they've got to have a short-term challenge that they're trying to achieve that allows them to move forward, not only have success, but actually create a functional improvement. Now, this is not your Six Sigma process by any means. There's not enough guys involved in it, and there's not enough documentation. But this is going to cause a lot of incremental change and incremental improvement on the floor where it has to happen. This is going to allow you to implement something that actually has planning, executing, documenting, and reviewing built into that process. To me, this is fundamentally a new way of going about things. It's another approach to continuous improvement, and there's a lot of them out there. Don't get stuck using any one tool set. Just because you're trained to be a Six Sigma black belt doesn't mean you can't practice other arts, right? I'm a third-degree black belt in Aikido. I've got friends who do Taekwondo and Karate and Judo, and I get to play with all of those. I also do some fencing. It's fun. You have to work outside your continuous improvement space and learn more from other methodologies and other opportunities. Don't get fixed on one path. Find another path so that you can make things more efficient, more accurate, and more connected across your organization. So, questions? Thoughts? Yes. Other questions? Who here has a continuous improvement program at their company? We got one, two? Who here would like to have a continuous improvement program at their company? There's at least a few more. That's good news. Up on this board, oops, let me go back. So one of the things we do is we're doing science. That's what this whole process is about. You have to be able to have a scientific method or a process for continuous improvement, or it's not going to get into anybody's head. It starts off with questioning and asking questions. It talks about experimenting and performing experiments. And you have to teach it and learn it. It's not something that comes from the inside. You may have excellent problem solvers out there, but unless they have tools that they can reproduce this and pass this information on, they're going to be your only experts. I want everyone in your organization to be an expert, at least on basic problem solving. And the last thing we have to do is we have to manage this process. I was at a presentation recently at UW-Milwaukee, and Dr. Bill Mitchell came up and spoke to us about management and how to be an excellent leader. And he said you need to manage the expectations of 4 kinds of people. You need to be able to manage the people beneath you. You need to be able to manage the people beside you. You need to be able to manage the people above you. And I'm sorry about the slide. You also need to be able to manage yourself. These are the 5 people you have to be able to manage in your life, and you have to be able to manage their expectations, whether you're doing continuous improvement or any other operation. So keep that in mind as you roll forward today. If you've got continuous improvement problems, talk to me. Maybe I've got some solutions or can point you in the right direction. I do keep my thumb on this. I do keep researching this on an ongoing basis. So let's see what we can talk. Thank you very much for your time. I'm getting you out just a few moments early. Congratulations. Thank you all for participating. I appreciate your time. At the back of your packets, there are reference materials in there. I gave you references to everything that I've shown here today. You've got a copy of the poem, the complete poem from Kipling, and you also have a short version of the learner board and the coaching kata. So you've got something to take home with you. That's very cool. Thank you all for your time. And if you want to see the encore, it'll be happening in Chicago in about a month.